Hey, I'm Stephen Glosser.
And I'm Megan Pikert.
Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast.
A podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood.
A season that's marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions.
Join us for some real conversations as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life.
We're so glad you're here, and we'd love to have you join our little Going Somewhere podcast community. Follow us on Instagram at goingsomewhere.podcast and join the conversation.
We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together.
Thanks for listening. Let's jump into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today we're joined by our friend Heidi Cottingham. What's up, Heidi?
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
What a start to an episode. Well, we're pumped you're here. You just recently completed the Going Somewhere Gauntlet. That's what I'm calling it now.
Okay.
Where you listened to all the episodes.
All 73.
How long
You
did it?
finished.
Oh, yeah. Every single one of them.
I didn't know. You were
How
caught
long
up.
did it take you? Like, when did you first learn about the podcast, and how long was that journey? And would you recommend it to others?
I have recommended it to others.
Nice.
Even seasoned people like me, I've recommended it to.
What do you mean by seasoned?
Older.
We won't out you. That's
Yeah.
it. We'll leave it at that.
No, it's the fun thing about you on. But okay, back to my question. You would recommend it?
And I have.
And then how long did it take you?
I feel like I started watching it or listening to it after the young adult conference.
Oh, so just February.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yep. That's all it's been on my car. Like when I drive to work or drive to
Nice.
church. Yeah. I listen to you guys.
That's pretty fun. Well, we're excited to have you here. You are not only a listener, but you are also I'm not going to call you a critic because it's constructive.
It's been good feedback. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, you are an advocate. And so if listeners here today, we've started ending all of our episodes with our tagline. Well, Heidi was the one who's like, hey, I think it would be cool if you guys ended it with the tagline. And so we're like, sounds good. She has other things that we're going to work on implementing too, Heidi. Are there any other feedback that you would like for us to...
Open mic.
No, I think those were the two that were my main ones. So I just want you to be the best version of
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And that's how we see it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't invite you on if we were like, oh, Heidi just
Here
keeps
she comes.
roasting us about the podcast.
Yeah. But you listened to all of the episodes. Did you have one that stood out to you or one that you took a lot from?
I would say I was more so thinking about which one was my favorite.
Yeah.
And my favorite one was when you and Taylor
Oh,
did
really?
the interview together. Because I felt like, just because I know Taylor from work and from church and such, I just felt like I could hear the joy in your marriage. And that just brought me joy. Just hearing the way you guys loved each other and were concerned. And I think you've shared that throughout a lot of the different episodes on how you're trying to be a better husband, how you're trying to be a better father, how you're trying to be a better minister. And just hearing that constant striving for that, of what God wants for the best of your life. And I think I could hear that kind of emulating in your conversation between the two of you. And you could hear and almost see some of those inside jokes that weren't so much inside jokes because you included everybody, but you brought us along with the joy and some of the struggles.
Nice.
And I think that was also probably one of my favorite times of life too, that age, and having young kids and being newer in the marriage.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's one of my favorites too. I'm a little biased, but we should have Taylor back on.
I've talked about that. We're going to do a girl takeover. We're kicking Steven off the
Ooh.
podcast. Taylor is coming on and we're just going to chat. Because I
Nice.
think it'd be so fun. I love
Yeah.
Taylor.
She's a good time. Well, that's fun though. I appreciate you listening. And now you listen to yourself this week. So that'll be good.
That might feel frightening, but I will do it.
Do you listen to every episode? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do. Because I find the quotes for our
Yeah,
Instagram posts.
I don't listen to. I listen to them now. Like right now is when I'm
You're
listening.
living it.
Yeah. And then I edit it, so I do listen to it there. So
It's kind of like going back. I remember when I was a kid, because my dad was a pastor, and I did a lot of singing, and I went to college and sang and such.
yeah,
But I remember my dad coming to events and recording me and recording my solos. And then he'd send it back to me on a cassette or on a disc. And I was like,
Oh, you are older.
I don't want to listen. I remember 8 tracks. My mom and dad had 8 tracks in their car.
Oh no.
John
That's awesome,
Denver, Karen Carpenter.
That's great though. So were you like, was he wanting you to listen to it to like improve, or was he just like
Oh,
proud
no, because
dad?
he was so proud.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And so he would,
Because that could go one of two ways.
Yeah.
That could be like proud dad, or it could be like sing better.
Right. So.
I know people like that I played sports with that their dad would do that. Like they would, and it was out of love, but they would record it and be like, watch this thing and tell me what you did wrong, you know?
Yeah. Now, like if I was writing a paper or something, and he'd correct it, obviously, then we'd need to do corrections because he was also an English major. So, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, as you may know, Heidi does not classify herself as a young adult, but she's a young adult advocate and she's a young adult at heart. And I think that what I've been most excited about having you on the podcast is, well, who you are. And Rhythm Conference was kind of, we've known each other for a lot longer than that, but you served the entire weekend at our young adult conference and just loved on people. You met a guy and he got baptized the same day.
Okay, wait, can we talk about, so you have fostered a connection now with this
Yes.
young adult that you, and
Okay,
he dog sat for you
Right.
this past weekend.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep introing
Okay,
really
sorry.
quick. Yeah, come on. No, I'm just kidding. And then we'll come back to that because basically though, what I was saying is like you're always around young adults. You are speaking into them. You have a passion to see them live for Jesus and to be all that God has had them to be. So I think that's a really fun angle for this week's episode. But let's go back now. Sorry, Megan. I did not mean to like get mad at you, but at Rhythm Conference, you met a young man who was looking for something, and we'll start there.
Yeah. So I was just in, I think it's the West Lobby. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really good at directions. But anyway, so I
Yeah.
was over there, and this young adult came in, and he looked so sad. And he just, even his shoulders were drooping, his face was drooping, his hands were just like, ugh. He was kind of, sorry, but he looked like Eeyore. He was so sad.
Yeah.
And he was looking for his small group. And so I'm like, I don't know where it is. And so I texted Megan and I'm like, hey, where's this small group? And in the time between finding that small group, I had also sent another young adult out to try and help him find it. And then Megan texted me back and said, actually, all the small groups are off campus and he should have gotten an email. So when can I say his name?
Yeah.
I think he'll be good.
As long as he's good. Yeah.
So Jamal, came back with Christian, who I had sent Christian to go out and try and help them find where the small group was. They came back and I'm like, hey, gosh, you should have gotten an email. Did you get an email saying it was off campus or in a different place? And he kind of said, yeah, I got an email, but I didn't read it. And I'm like, oh, shoot, because you're off campus today. But I'm like, why don't you just stay here? Just stay for the rest of the conference. And he's like, well, can I do that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I had no clue if he could or not, to be honest. But I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I texted Megan and she's like, yeah, sure, have him stay. And by noon, I saw him. And it was like this weight had been lifted from him. He was walking lighter. He was smiling. And he was actually excited to connect with me again and say, he's like, hey, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I stayed. This is God. God wanted me to be here. I know it. And he was just on fire. It was super cool to see that shift. And then probably about 2:45, 3 o'clock, I was in that same place and I see him beelining out of the church. And I'm like, oh, shoot, he's leaving. Something happened. And I was really bummed. But then he came back maybe 20 minutes later. He's flying in and he had gone to go pick up his cousin, who is a Christian, because he was getting baptized at 3 and rededicating his life to God. And it was just so amazing just to think that it started out of a miscommunication that God totally used to change and transform this guy's life. you know, and I've been able to keep in contact with him. And occasionally when I'm sitting in church by myself, he'll come and sit with me, or I'll sit with him. And it's just been a really neat connection, just to be able to continue to pray for him and to continue to pray that he's got both feet in, because that was what he made a testimony to, that he wanted to have both feet in. And I think it was you that baptized him too. Yep. So it was really cool to see how God worked through that whole situation.
That's so cool. And I mean, he was the last minute add-on for baptisms. I met him kind of shortly before, and I always like to at least let me know your story, make sure that, what you're doing. And it was so sincere. It was so genuine.
Absolutely.
And his cousin helped baptize him, which was super cool. And then what this past Sunday was cool is a couple Sundays ago, we did baptisms at our church. And I saw him sitting in like the third row, and I went over and he pointed at a guy and he's like, "That's my roommate." And so his roommate got baptized at church just this past month. And so it's so cool to see what God's doing. And so that story, I think it's just recent for me because I've only known you for a short time, but that is kind of like a picture of you is somebody that's just like, I'm going to make it happen. I don't care what it's going to look like. And just, where does that heart come from? Because we can go back and we can kind of jump into your story a little bit and what you're doing for a profession, but where does that kind of heart for young adults come from?
I think, okay, so I'm going to back up with your question where you said, where does that passion come from?
Yeah.
And I just kind of had a little flash, and that passion of making things happen reminds me of my mom. And I don't think I shared with you guys before, but my mom was physically handicapped, and she walked with a brace and crutches. And from a very young age, she had polio when she was 3. She was actually at Sister Kenny, and her whole body was paralyzed. All she could move was her thumb. That was the only thing. And she was there. I feel like what we were told was like 18 months as a 3-year-old. And it was like a long distance. Her parents lived on a farm, so they didn't get to see her except for on weekends. And I can't imagine leaving a 3-year-old, but they had to, work on the farm and take care of things and such. But she wound up going through a recovery, pretty significant, but in the end had to walk with braces and crutches. And she was told at an early age that nobody would love her, that nobody would want to marry her, and that she would never have children. And so that she'd better get a good education because she would need to support herself. And she really just persevered through that and said, "You tell me no, I'm going to do it." And she wound up getting a master's in math and computer science, being valedictorian of her class, just a brilliant, brilliant mind. And honestly, I don't have any memories of her that are negative. And I don't remember her ever talking negatively about someone. And I don't remember anyone ever talking negatively about her. But she just always persevered and pushed through really, really hard things when back in the 70s, 60s, and 80s, there wasn't a lot of support for people who had physical disabilities. And so she was always pushing forward to make a way for other people, like going to different churches and seeing that they had meetings on the second floor that people who had disabilities couldn't get to that second floor. And so she would campaign for that church to get an elevator, and she would fundraise for those places. And she was always, if I look back on that, Mom was always making a way for not only herself, but other people, regardless if they had a disability or a struggle, whatever it is. So I think that's kind of where that make-a-way path was created in my life. So
that's cool. So that's just how you are in every aspect of life. It's like go-getter.
I don't know if I'd say that.
Well, okay, the other day we had an event. We were celebrating our life group leaders, and you were sitting at a table and you were knitting. And
okay. We're giving so many giveaways of her age right now.
No, okay. But you were sitting over knitting, and the girl sitting next to me goes, "Is that girl knitting?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's actually like a baby blanket for her new grandchild." And I just thought it was funny, but just talking about like go get you like to do things. You like to be busy and have your hand in a lot of stuff. But I just thought that was funny. You were like being celebrated at an event where you're being appreciated, but you're like doing something for someone else.
And it was actually because I was behind on knitting.
So she's not a go-getter. I'm just kidding.
I have like less than 2 weeks before this new baby's coming of my grandkids. So
well, and I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but you also told me that you fell asleep and took a nap, and that's why you felt like you had to
I know. Yes. I do like my
At the end of
naps.
this episode, we're gonna make a poll where people just guess your age without ever seeing you, just to see all of these hints and see
Okay, so
where
I won't give it away.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But
I'm game for it. I'm
yeah.
game.
From the
Is there going to be a prize though? That's the
yeah,
trick.
we can make a
Okay,
prize.
all right, as long as
We
there's a
got
prize.
we got books to give away.
Okay.
We always got books to give away.
Don't you have podcast glass?
Oh yeah, we have mugs.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I want.
Do you have a mug yet?
No, I don't.
We'll get you a mug.
Okay.
But young adults, back to that again.
Yes.
You know, what's kind of sparked that? And I know as a mom, obviously that probably plays a role. But just
No.
is this an age group that you've always kind of gravitated towards?
No.
Okay.
I think actually it's since I've come to Northview that passion has just kind of transposed. And I think also working at Valley, I didn't, really know what age specifically I wanted to work with because I've been in social work for over 30 years. There's another clue. I've been in social work for over 30 years, but I just went and got my master's probably like 4 years ago and decided to go into therapy and do that as a profession. And I was given a couple clients who are young adults, and I just really found a passion there. And then being here and having that opportunity to serve at the Rhythm Conference and just the little connections that I've been getting with this age group. And it's just kind of turned into a passion that I didn't realize I had, but I really do have. And it's become one of my favorite age groups to work with.
When you are serving with young adults, is there memories or thoughts about your life that you come back to of like, what would I have wanted when I was that age? Or is it just kind of responding to the need of the moment?
I don't think it's so much of what I wanted, but it brings me back to a time that I really, really enjoyed. So we raised our first two kids at a Bible camp. So we were surrounded with college kids, and I loved that season, being at a Bible camp full-time year-round for 4 years. And I just think part of the other thing that sparks it is I remember there was two of us young adults at camp, Sarah Johnson and myself, and we were new wives, and I wound up being the first mom between the two of us. But we were new wives.
Congratulations on winning the race. Yeah.
We were on the campus together, and there was two women, Jody Stevenson and Tanya Sorensen, were two women that just poured into Sarah and my life, just poured into us. They met with us weekly and led us in a Bible study. And Jody had a passion for the Old Testament. And I had never really read the Old Testament, but that kind of put a spark in my heart for the Old Testament. Yeah. And I love reading the Old Testament too. And we found out before that you and I both really like Nehemiah.
Yeah. We're Nehemiah friends.
Yeah. And I don't think that I had ever read Nehemiah until Jody introduced us to that and to the names of God. And I think just remembering back to that season of how valuable that was with those two women pouring into us. And now being at that age where I can do that into other young women and young men has been a new passion that I didn't know I had.
That's super cool.
Oh, that's super cool. I think as a young adult, I've just gotten to benefit from your heart for young adults. And I saw that at Rhythm Conference too, but also just like the encouragement that you gave me all weekend too, as being a young adult that was serving young adults. You see people that are kind of in the unseen and in the shadows serving. And I think that's like where the Jamal story came. He could have snuck in and snuck out. But I think just hearing your story a little bit of like, this wasn't necessarily a passion that I knew I had, is just really cool because it's like the Lord broke your heart or gave you his heart for this demographic of people. And I've just seen and benefited from it in my own life of, just like feeling loved by a parental figure too. And so I appreciate you a ton and I'm really grateful. But I kind of wanted to chat a little bit too about, we didn't get too much into it, but you said like you're a therapist in mental health and profession, but what drew you to that career field? And what was like the initial spark that you knew you wanted to go into it? Because it's a hot button topic right now, obviously, but you've been in it for 30 years up till this point. So kind of what what sparked it? What stirred in your heart that made you want to pursue that and then go to grad school and things like that?
I think for me, I think back to my mom even saying, you know, she's like, Heidi always was going to be a social worker. I knew she was going to be a social worker. I knew she was going to be a social worker. And Mom never knew I was a therapist because she passed away like 13 years ago or something. And she would I remember her telling people stories of me coming home late for curfew. And my reason was, well, so-and-so just needed to talk, Mom. They really just needed to talk. And literally that was why I was late for curfews all the time, is because I was talking to someone or talking with someone. And I think that's always, that's a hard thing for me, is just to walk out on somebody after they're talking. I want to hear the story. I want to, you know, keep on listening. I think that's probably one of my challenges, even at work. You know, if you've got an hour or 45 minutes, it's like so hard just to stop at the end of the hour because you see somebody's heart and you just want to see the full circle and the completion, but that's not always what gets to happen in the therapy world, because you have other people waiting and next people. So
that's cool though. Do you remember that being an inspiration for that, of like your mom kind of speaking that over you, or was it just kind of like later on in life you realized like, oh yeah, she was saying that for a long time?
Yeah, I think it was later in life.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool though. Shows the power of like, whether it's a parent or any person, that we can really speak life into people. But with that, like, obviously with young adults, I think mental health is, like you said, it is a topic that comes up a lot. And when we do some polls or whatever, that's a topic that a lot of people gravitate towards, because I think it's so prevalent in young adults. And I just read a book called Anxious Generation, which really talks about like how the turning point in a lot of ways was the rise of tech and the cell phone in your pocket, and in, you know, the amount of information you have and how relationships change and all those things. But are there kind of core things that, especially when you work with young adults, obviously not specific stories, but just things that you're seeing and kind of themes or patterns that you've recognized in especially young adults?
First of all, I think of when I hear how many books the two of you read, I feel anxious because I'm like, how are you guys doing this? I mean, I don't have kids at home anymore. I have a dog. And I'm like, you're reading like 500 books in a year between the two of you. I'm like,
that's an exaggeration.
I don't know if I've read a full book in the last year.
Also, though, I have been in Steven's car and the audiobook is on like 2 speed. And I'm like, how are you? I know, but how are you retaining the amount of information that's coming at you? But so I think the same thing about him. But
so
we figured out. I haven't always. In high school, I couldn't finish a book. Like my English teacher, one of my great admissions to her was that I never read one of her books. And she's like one of my favorite teachers I had. We're still friends. She's the principal at vice principal at my old school now. And so, but yeah, I admitted to her, like, I got through your class without reading one of the books. But then I came to college and I was given like a Christian book that like inspired my faith. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. But I've gotten into lots of topics, but yeah.
See, I was the student that had to read the book, highlight the book, take notes on the book, take flashcards on the book, and then quiz myself. School wasn't easy for me.
We had the internet.
Yeah, we didn't have the internet when I was in school. Not even when I was in undergrad.
We're giving more hints. I like this. This is fun. But yeah, so back to the question, just kind of like what are some things that you maybe see, or themes or patterns?
Some of the things that I see in the young adults world is there's a hunger for knowledge and experience, and to hear stories and shared experiences. And that was one of the things, I don't know if I said it to you or to Megan, but I think when I listened to your podcast, the concerns and questions that young adults are going through are very similar to more seasoned people such as myself. It's just a different twist to it. You know, you're wanting relationships. You're wanting to know that you're going in the right direction. You want to know that you're following God's will. You're hungry for relationships. And for some of us, you know, for myself, I've lived a season of being in the bleachers, you know, watching the football games, watching the wrestling matches, watching the volleyball games. And I've had my core moms group sitting in the bleachers. And then all of a sudden life gets thrown at you and it changes. And for me, I was plopped in a whole nother state with no friends, no bleachers to sit in, and wanting those relationships and wanting those friendships. It's the same thing that people your age are wanting. So I think that's...
So you'd say it's more human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. I would say very few of the episodes that you guys have had, I haven't been able to take something out of and going, yeah, that's exactly what we're going through as seasoned adults.
Why? This is just raw, but why do you think that is? Like, what do you think that is? Because I feel like when you're in each season, it feels like you are alone. Like, it feels like this is the season that nobody has the answers for. And I think there's, being kind of coming into that, I was a college pastor and then really saw a gap of like people kind of going into an abyss after college in some ways, because there's so much that I think that's the thing that has always been really big for me is I think they go into so many things after college and you're finding jobs in the finance. It all changes so drastically in such a short period of time. But I think you're absolutely right that like the same needs or the same wants or the same gaps just take different form. And so I'm just curious, what do you guys think about that?
I think part of it is because it hasn't been a season that you've gone through at that point in time.
Right. So it's just more of the newness of it.
Right. It just changes. It looks a little different. It's just like even the stages of a child. You have an infant, then you have a toddler, then you have that young child, then you have the teenager, then the young adult. It's each of those stages of life are different, and you're learning different things at those stages.
That's
and
cool.
You're learning how to manage those things, as a parent. Every child is different and you have to learn different styles. I'm sure that you found that with your kids, that you can't parent one kid the same way you can parent the other. And you try and find that balance and try and have things equal and fair.
I remember not the first time, but I remember a time trying to do that with my kids. And the reaction for Summit was so different than Kinsley. And I was like, oh man, like he is a different child. Like his reaction was totally different. But I think something on this topic too, though, is I think it's easy sometimes. And even so for me, I get to speak at a youth camp every summer. I'm going to be with junior hires for a week. I'm super excited. It's also out of my comfort zone. But there's times where I almost, you're sitting with one of them and they're like, yeah, my girlfriend dumped me and they're 13. And it's hard sometimes because you're like, oh, buddy, you're fine.
You don't know how many times you're going to get
dumped.
dumped.
Yeah. You're like, you're fine.
This isn't the first.
But everything that I've learned, read, people that have spoken into my life are just like, no, that is the most real thing to them. So just as much as your most real thing is, and just as challenging as the most difficult thing you're going through, that is the same exact thing. And so I think that's a cool thing too, is when you turn around and you get to share with different people of different ages, you get to empathize with them. And I think you do that well. So like, how do you do that? Or like, what's I don't know the question I'm asking, but I think it's just, we're just kind of going raw here. We're just kind of figuring it out as we go. I like it.
Yeah. So how do you, having that realization of like, we don't ever really feel like we've arrived. Like you're going to go through kind of the same of, I'm going to have to make new friends again. I'm going to move a couple times in adulthood. And I think when you were talking, my first thought was like, man, do we ever just arrive? Do we ever just have it figured out and just feel good and feel like, oh man, we're finally doing it? But life is unpredictable, right? And so how do you approach that mentality and have empathy for like the other people around you that are going through different seasons, whether it's someone older than you that's going through something that maybe you haven't experienced but you can relate to in a different way, or mentoring or guiding a young adult through something that is similar to what you might be going through in your current season?
I think it's about those relationships and just validating,
Yeah.
And even validating feelings, although keeping in mind that we have our feelings. However, our feelings can't determine the answer of something, because our feelings can be unpredictable, and I think listening to those stories, last weekend I was at a retreat at Devil's Lake, and I was with a group of women who are more seasoned than I am in life, and just hearing their stories, just listening to their stories and going, oh, just like you were saying, Megan, you're listening to my story and just going, oh, we're going to have all these changes. And do we ever arrive? And I don't think that we do ever completely arrive until the end, and when we're in heaven, that's when we've arrived. I think of even my mom. My dad had a banner that that talked about her healing, that her healing never happened here on earth. Even though we prayed for it and we asked God, and her parents prayed for her to be healed from polio, but she wasn't on this side of heaven. And the banner said something about her healing has been complete and fully arrived, And
That's cool.
that's when she got her complete healing. But God used my mom in an incredible way because of her handicap.
I think the idea of empathy too, putting yourself in their shoes and stuff. And I know that as I go into a week of camp, for instance, with junior hires, I'm trying to refresh myself on what life was like. And I think there's so much power to reminding ourselves of our stories. And then, so when I'm hearing a boy talk about a breakup, I'm actually thinking about something similar from that season. And I try to remind myself of that. And I think that you said it, like that connection with people, like, because I feel like you are not the type of person that's like you need to be the sage on the stage who gives all the best advice, although you give really great advice. You're more of the guide on the side, and the person that just comes alongside you and cheers you on and encourages you, is there for you. And I think that I want to be more like that, because you can get so caught up in your own thing of what's going on in your life that you miss out on opportunities to serve the people around you.
And I think for me too, is I've made a lot of mistakes, and I continue to make mistakes, and I even had, some conversations with my son about that recently, about something that I had said that came out in a completely different way, because I like to be silly and I like to be sarcastic. And so sometimes that can be taken the wrong way. So I think that being able to use that failure and go, okay, what are we going to do with this? How do we need to be more conscious in the future, about our actions and our words? And I think that that's part of who I've become, is taking those failures and going, all right, God, what are we going to do with this hot mess?
Yeah. What do you think, just advice for somebody that is maybe in that place of not being able to admit those mistakes, and is like, what do you see from the mental health side of that, the negative side of that, and then how should they move forward?
Well, I think if it's a genuine mistake that you need to work on, if you don't work on that, you're going to damage relationships around you. You're going to continue to make the mistakes, and you're going to continue to hurt people. And I don't feel like you're going to fully arrive to where God wants to transform you and change you and help you grow in those areas. I think failure can be really, really hard, but it's what we do with it in the end that matters,
That's good.
That's really good.
I think even in my own journey, seeing counselor and all of those things, I think so much of it was admitting my reality, admitting of where I was at. And I've really come to say, we have to know where you're at before you can go to where you're going. If you look at a map, if you think you're in Fargo, where we are, and you're actually in Bismarck and you're trying to get to Montana, you're not going to have the right coordinates. You're not going to go in the right, well, you would go in the right direction, but that's beside the point. But yeah, the idea of admitting where you're at, and why is it so hard? Why do we have such a hard time admitting, yeah, I'm a little messed up?
I think because we kind of think it's bad.
Yeah.
Or that we're a bad person for making that mistake or making that wrong choice or doing the wrong thing. But I think if you even look at the Bible, look at how many mistakes that God used. I mean, David had somebody murdered, and God still calls him a man after God's heart. That's a prime mistake that God still used. Think of, the thieves on the cross. They were thieves, but God still used that as a part of a transformation story and part of him dying on the cross and his resurrection. That was part of the story, is that mess.
That's good.
Yeah. What would you say if someone listening right now is yeah, I've made mistakes, but I know God can use it. How would you encourage someone to correct the things, to repair relationships, or to take steps to build like a healthier mental space so that they can make positive decisions moving forward.
I think you have to, you know, think about the whole situation. You know, where do you want that relationship to go? Do you want to end this relations like this? Do you want to keep it in this spot? And I think God holds us to a level of accountability too, to make sure that we've done everything that we can to make right relationships with people. And I think that that's really hard, but where's your heart? You know, what do you want as this to be the outcome of this situation? How do you want this relationship to be? What do you want people to remember you as your legacy? You know, and sometimes we just have to say, I made a mistake. And I'm definitely not perfect at that at all. And I don't want that to be the perception at all, because I've definitely made mistakes and had to be called out on them. So I think denying it is going to be hard, is going to be really damaging, you know, especially if it's truth that somebody is pouring into your life. So I don't know, is that kind of answer?
Yeah, I had it was a teaching I heard once, and I just remember the speaker saying, if you want to be a good leader, you have to be quick to apologize, and you have to learn to, even though you might not think that you made the wrong decision, it's how someone perceives it, and it's how that you need to understand the empathy side of ministry. Basically, was basically the teaching, and it was really powerful for me. Of like, but I don't want to. Like, apologizing admits that I did something wrong. Apologizing forces me to be humble, or it forces me to like kind of step in the direction of forgiveness, and that can be really hard.
And it kind of feels icky, and it's scary, you know. And I think, you know, somebody once shared with me, it's the first 6 or 7 seconds of a confrontation, or telling somebody or admitting to somebody that you've done something wrong, or you feel like there's a problem in the relationship. It's those first 6 to 7 seconds that are the most uncomfortable. If you can get past that, it's a lot easier. The conversation turns easier. You know, just talking to the person, you know, hey, is there something that I've done to hurt you, or something that I've done to make you question who I am? You know, having that conversation. And I found that when I've done that in situations, it might be my fault, but at the same time, sometimes it reveals something that the other person is going through that was hard for them in that moment. And you happen to catch them on a bad moment, and it opens that for a conversation to help them go through some healing, and for them to have some recognition. Oh, gosh, I didn't realize that I came off that way in the situation to you. So I think there's multiple ways to look at it too.
That's good. I think too, it's inviting people in, you know, to actually call us out, you know, having some safe people that, because I think that's the thing is sometimes we think we're all alone, or we also think that nobody realizes it. And I think more often than not in my life, the people that are closest to me, usually, at least there's certain things that they can speak into, you know, the blind spots and the dumb spots in our life, that it's like, yeah, you come across this way, and I don't think you mean to. But I think sometimes what we've done is we've shut that wall, or we've put a wall up, I should say, that doesn't allow people to do that. And maybe that's because we will be reactionary, and we've been reactionary in the past. But I think it's so healthy to give permission to people to do that, and then receive it, you know. And it's not always easy. I remember we did this. I used to lead our Chi Alpha internship, and we did this assignment where basically the assignment was to roommates, significant others, parents, people that you're close to basically reach out and just say, like, what is 1 or 2 things that damage our relationship, or what are 2 habits that I have that are frustrating? How do I deal with, you know, with feedback? And then they were supposed to give it to you. And I remember doing it myself, going like, oh man,
Scary.
It is scary. It's scary. And then I've gotten it where somebody has taken me up on it, and my initial reaction is to not believe it, or to not. And I've just learned, I think too, of like, there's some truth to it. So even if the whole story isn't there, if they don't understand, you know, why you reacted that way, and there was a bad day or something that triggered, you know, whatever, but there's always truth to it. And we have to have that humble, soft heart to admit that. But I think
it's hard not to justify it too.
Yeah.
You know, when you get that negative feedback or that criticism, not to, I mean, that's really hard not to justify. Well, I was just because, or this is what I was thinking, or, you know, it's hard not to do that.
Right. For sure. What do you think, just in general? So just kind of going back to your daily life of what you do, what are some things that, because I think one of the biggest things with mental health and just spiritual health, all those things, is proactivity, you know, because so much of it, a lot of people reserve that work for like when it's rock bottom and you need to like, oh man, I need a therapist, you know. I've seen it as more of a proactive support in my life of building the right habits. So like, what are some things that you would encourage people to say yes to, or to say no to, even just healthy habits, rhythms when it comes to mental health and emotional health?
I think bottom line with mental health and emotional health is your spiritual health. And I think for me that when I'm taking care of myself spiritually, that's when my mental health is best, because the enemy, he might still be lying to me, but I'm able to thwart off those things easier because I've got the truth, because I've read something maybe the day before or that day, you know. A challenge that I remember, I think it was back in October, that somebody put out there was to take 10 promises of the Bible and then rewrite those 10 promises out so that it kind of applied to you specifically.
Yeah.
And say those 10 promises every day for 30 days out loud. So you just read through the list out loud. And I found that as a really powerful tool for me to kind of throw those darts back at the enemy when he started lying to me, when I started doubting myself, or was struggling with where I was emotionally. And having those truths that I could throw back was so helpful. And the thing that's been cool too is those 10 promises that I pulled out personally, because they're familiar to me, because I practiced them and I recited them. I wouldn't, they are not memorized, because that has not been my gift yet. But I've been able to use them and apply them in other situations. And when people are struggling, I remember there was a post on Facebook that just yesterday that somebody said that the enemy had thrown something at them. And I went to my 10 promises and I'm like, hey, this is what the Bible says. You have the power to do this.
Yeah.
I think it says, look, he has given me authority to trample on snakes, scorpions, and overcome all the power of the enemy, and nothing will harm me. And that's Luke 10:19. And I was able to go, oh yeah, I remember that. This is what you can do. This, you can throw that back at the enemy, you know? And when people are being mean to us and cruel to us, and our enemy, I had one in here that talks about our enemy will become nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and just being able to have those things. Because when you've got that healthy spiritual life, I think you can have a healthy mental health and emotional life.
That's so good. I think that, I mean, I've seen it in my life, you know, the seasons where struggling in that area of just staying connected to God, or consistency in reading the word or whatever, like it affects everything, you know. It starts to affect relational health, you know, like I'm not the husband, or I'm not the friend I want to be, and I'm reactionary instead of being more reflective in nature and stuff. So yeah, that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other questions? I know we've got our main ending question, and then Heidi is going to conclude the episode this week, which we're super excited about. But
yeah, I mean, one thing I was just thinking, like when you were talking about the 10 promises, kind of another hot button topic for young adults right now is like the idea of manifestation, which we could get on a whole rabbit trail right now. But to keep it simple, how is reciting the 10 promises of God and having scripture and truth different than like manifesting the life that you want? How would you differentiate the two?
I'm not sure if I would say that they're different. I think they're similar in different ways, maybe. Yeah, I feel like that they're very similar, you know, and just speaking out the truth, you know, and confronting lies, because I think that, you know, we've heard many people say, you know, the enemy isn't using new tactics. He's using the same ones he used thousands of years ago. I mean, he is not a creative enemy. he uses the same one over and over and over because he knows that people can fall for them easily because they have time and time and time again. So I think it's just getting that truth into your heart that's important. And I think that the other thing too is it's not just one way. It's not just reading the scriptures, not just journaling. It's not just praying. It's not just worshiping. It's not just fellowshipping. It's all those things in a combination and doing them at different times in different ways, you know. And I think that's the cool thing about God is we have the ability to be creative where the enemy doesn't have the ability to be creative.
Yeah. Well, I think even on the manifestation thing too, like secular manifestation bypasses the will of God, you know, and also it's a sloppy view of suffering, you know, because suffering is oftentimes a part of the will of God. And your mom's story would be an example of that. You know, if it was just about, I am healthy, I no longer have polio, I am, you know, and then that's not the end story. Where does that leave you? You know, but when you realize like God, I'm in God's hand, but I'm going to proclaim the truth that the tactics of the enemy have no power in the end, you know, like those things, you hold on to those. So I think, you know, that's I think a way that I kind of think of that whole idea is that there's that, I think the manifestation thing that a lot of people, and I deal with it a lot with people of just kind of like, I'm going to just manifest good things. And I understand sometimes the language is where we get tripped up, and it's like, yeah, I desire to be all that God has for me. And I believe God has good things. That's part of the promises that we get to cling to, is that even in the life of Joseph, even the bad things were used in good ways. So I can stand on that promise, but also embrace whatever God brings my way and use those promises in navigating those. So I don't know, that's kind of a thought that I had when you brought that up.
Because bad things do happen.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're in a sinful world.
Right.
And we're with people.
Yep.
And people can make bad choices.
It's very true. It's very true. And I think really the life of a follower of Jesus is, I mean, it's kind of in the title, following him and being obedient to what he calls us to, and embracing his will. And, you know, there's levels of that, of just like, yeah, I want to have a healthy marriage, you know, but I don't get a healthy marriage just by saying that. I can say that and remind myself that. I do a lot of, you know, things like envision future, you know, where you kind of take your current reality and then where do you feel God's calling you in this area? So I have an envisioned future of what my marriage can look like in 10 years. But what that inspires is the action steps that come next. So if I want to have this type of communication with my wife, if I want to be like this in public and, you know, in private, whatever the case is, well, what do we have to do today? Like, what is it that we have to start doing now? So I think that's where I see a difference too, if that makes sense.
I think on that note, I won't say who's doing it because I'd get in trouble if I did, but not from a legal standpoint, from a child perspective, you know. A commitment that somebody I know has made that every 5 years in their marriage, they go to marriage counseling, regardless of where they are in their marriage. And
That's
I think
cool.
that is one of the best things that you can do to protect your marriage, and especially when you're young and you're starting out, you know, because it gives you that space to bring up some of those, probably should tweak this a little bit, or this is going really, really well. Let's keep celebrating it. Let's keep going forward in this area. And I just think that is probably one of the most wisest things that this individual has done to make sure that they have a healthy and strong relationship, is doing that marriage counseling every 5 years, just kind of that fine tune up and checking in with each other with somebody who's not in that marriage.
Right.
You know, and I think that is really important too, because they can kind of help see what's going on and help make those tweaks.
That external perspective,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, our last question is, if you were to go into a time machine and
Big
have
time machine.
have a coffee, if they had coffee back then, I don't know.
They did have coffee back then.
I'm sorry. I'm done.
Too far.
I love people of all
Not
ages.
that seasoned.
I love people of all ages. And Heidi and I have a great friendship, and I can tease. But If you were to have coffee with 22-year-old Heidi, what advice would you give her?
Well, I don't think that the 22-year-old Heidi was drinking coffee then, because back then we didn't really do all the foo-foo drinks.
Right. It was just Folgers.
Yeah, and that's nasty.
Yeah.
Okay. Although my dad drank black coffee and my son drinks black coffee.
From a can.
That's so nasty. So I probably was having a Diet Coke.
Okay.
Yeah, we're probably having a
All
Diet
right. We
Coke.
got the situation. The scene is set.
Yeah. So I would say the rug is going to be pulled out from underneath you several times. And it's going to be a hard fall each time the rug gets pulled out. And you're going to wonder, where is this going to land and how is this going to come out good? But if you keep your eyes on God and keep standing on his promises and his truth and trusting that he is not going to leave you in this hot mess and that he's got a purpose and he doesn't waste any of our experiences, you're going to be okay. And you got to trust it. It's not going to make sense in the moment, but you got to trust, because he's not going to make you homeless and he's not going to make you eat ramen noodles living under a bridge if you keep walking in his way.
That's good.
It's good.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind eating some ramen under a bridge, but not like as a home.
No.
Not because you needed to.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a choice.
Yeah,
you
And
got
I'm
to
not
make.
saying that
it'd be a
people
choice.
who are eating ramen noodles or
I
living
know.
under a bridge are, not listening to what God's doing. But I
No,
think
I
for
know.
me, he's always provided
Yeah.
for all of my needs and for my children's needs and for my family's needs, even when maybe the providers in our life left and weren't doing those things,
Yeah.
As an adult.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks so much
Yeah.
for hanging out with us. I think this is something that we could do again. And, just bring in some questions too from guests. So if you guys want Heidi back on the podcast, send us some questions, because she'll come back. She'll hang out with us.
And don't
think.
forget, there is a prize for guessing my age.
Yeah,
You
I feel
can't Google it.
without the context, people are going to be like, why are they asking what her age is?
Why is everyone commenting
to-
numbers?
I'll have to put a pretty hard disclaimer on that one. But
And if it's on Instagram, I won't see it because I'm too old, because I don't do Instagram. So if you put it on my Facebook, I'll see it.
we'll see about that. But we'll make sure the answer, we'll get a book. Your favorite book. What's your favorite book?
Oh.
Do you have one?
Oh, yes, I do. Breath Prayers.
Oh,
It's
nice.
a devotional
Yeah,
book that is so good. Yeah.
Cool.
And I use it with several of my clients.
We'll make that happen. The
Yeah.
winner of the Guess Heidi's Age contest will get a book. That's awesome.
And don't worry, I won't see the number. And I don't really care, because I'm proud of my age.
I know.
Because I think I'm doing pretty good.
And that is the thing, is I think that people that don't resist it are just really the people that I gravitate towards too, because I just think every age is beautiful and amazing. And, I know people that turn 30 and they're like, my life is over. I know people that turn 60 and it's like, oh, I need to make every effort to feel younger, look younger. And I just think the best is when we embrace where we're at.
I did cry when I turned 20.
I get that.
But not.
I'm always
other
kind of
ages.
like I like the 40s. It sounds awesome to me. It's a little ways away. I got some times, but if it was tomorrow, I'd feel maybe a little different. But all that to say, thanks for being on the podcast. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening, everybody. Those of you who listen, we obviously would love to follow up with you. Goingsomewhere.podcast. That's where you can vote on Heidi's age and do all the other things that allow us to connect with you. Anything else to say to our guests before we turn it over to Heidi to end this thing?
No, just like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Glad you're listening.
Okay. We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together.